Hi, folks. I'm Justin Keay, Field Specialist in Horticulture with MU Extension, and we're joined today by Tim Reinbott, the Director of Field Operations at Kafner, to tell us a little bit about his research project into Physallis. And Tim, for folks who aren't familiar with Physallis, what's the common name for these plants?
Well, the common name for Physallis is tomatillos, and we often think of those as maybe verde sauce when we go to a restaurant or make it for ourselves.
And I notice on the slide up here, we have the tomatillos, but then we also have the ground cherries. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences between those?
Yes, both the tomatillo and the ground cherries are a distant cousin to tomatoes, and we'll get that in a little bit. But the tomatillos, we know that they're always ripe when they break the husk, and like you see in these photos. Where our ground cherries, they're a little different, a very similar type looking plant, except the fruit's much smaller, and they form within that husk, and so they don't ever break it, and their taste is quite a bit different. Tomatillos are more of a what you'd make a sauce out of or use in your salad, whereas your ground cherries are very sweet, and they're more for direct eating, or we've actually made some jams out of them.
So, I mean, this is a crop that I think, some people are growing in Missouri, but maybe not a ton. What were some of your research goals for this project?
But just that's exactly true, that some people grew them and knew about them, especially the tomatillos. Yeah, they would grow a few in their garden, but really the ground cherries, people don't know a lot about them. And if you look through our seed catalogs the last several years, you'll start to see a few more out there all the time. So we thought what we really need to do is that we need to evaluate some of these cultivars of both the tomatillos, because we've got big difference in them, and also the ground cherries, to try to give folks, the home gardeners, and maybe even on a commercial basis, some background of what did well here in Missouri, and not only in the field, but it also in the hoop house.
So I understand you've completed year one, and this is going to be a 2 or 3 year project.
It's going to be a 2-year project in the hoop house and in the field.
What were some of the varieties in year one that were some of the higher yielders, better producers from your guys' experience?
The big variety as far as size wise is your Super Verde. They're very large. You saw a picture of them earlier. But then the other ones, from Mexican strain to the purple Coban and the purple, they're all about the medium size. Some of them are a little bit larger. And as you can see on there, the number of fruits makes a big difference, in the fruit per plant size makes quite a bit of difference. And what we found, though, talking to folks that we gave some fruits away to try them, and then others that already tried them, and is that they really like the purple types for salads. Though they really like that fresh eating, more of the purple, that taste went really well. Whereas more the other ones, the Super Verdes, the Mexican strains, and some of the other ones were a bit better for the Verde sauce. So we have a little bit of different uses for them. And that's another thing that we really wanted to bring out, was what can you do with these? Not just make Verde sauce, but how can you use them in your meals? And we kind of look at them where you use fresh tomatoes. This is where you might want to try out some of these tomatillos, and the ones that did were really happy with them. So on the ground cherry type, we knew that people were going to be surprised, and so we had 4 different ones, and they have all 4 have a little different taste. But what you want to know about the Physallis is that they're very determinate, meaning they put most of their fruit on with a short period of time, about 3 weeks or so. You're probably getting 80% of your yield. And to stretch that out over more of a longer growing season, we need to look at now, do we stagger our plantings? Do we start, early May and go until mid-June with our plantings to get that to spread out?
Yeah, definitely an important consideration for marketing in terms of how
really
that crop
is.
comes off. I understand you guys also did some flavor testing. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. we thought one of the best ways to compare our ground cherries would be to compare it with cherry tomatoes. So we had a vegetable and flower and butterfly field day. We had lots of folks coming by. So we had a taste test. We had our cherry tomatoes, and we had a lot of different types of those and colors and what have you. But we also had our 5 different ground cherries. And most people that came up, and we were able, and we had them to try them and then give them a rating of 1 to 5. Now, in my world, 1 means excellent, 5 means poor. So the lower the number, the better it is, the sweeter that the fruit is. And it was very interesting. If you look at the top 3 ground cherries, they were better than any of the cherry tomatoes. That's amazing to me. Some of these cherry tomatoes that have the word sweet in them, you know they're good. But the people preferred the ground cherries flavor over those cherry tomatoes. And even the ones that didn't go as high, Goldie and Aunt Molly's, they were pretty good compared to most of the cherry tomatoes. Kind of got a feeling that the only reason that the Aunt Molly's and Goldies might have been as high as they were because we had a few underripe ones in there that people were surprised with. But what was interesting is watching the people's face when they ate their first ground cherry. It was utterly surprising. They couldn't believe how good those tasted. So we're pretty excited about that. And I think as people learn more about them, they're going to start looking more, not just fresh eating, but as I mentioned earlier, how about using them in jams and in cobblers? Because the flavor of these would fit right into them. And as you see, they have names like strawberry and pineapple because they often have a very fruity taste to them.
Kind of cool to think about, a new crop with a new flavor, potentially some value added potential as well.
Oh, definitely. And one thing I want to add is, well, how do you know when they're ripe? On a ground cherry, it pretty well has to fall off the plant. So if you mulch with straw, you may have a little problems finding them. So you may think about that when you do plant them, that you're gonna have to pick these off the ground. So make sure you have something that's mulched that's easy for them to be picked up from.
Gotcha. So, what are some of your key takeaways from this year 1 of this project, and maybe tips that you have for growers in Missouri who are looking to get involved with these crops?
Well, my biggest surprise was that how determined the growth was. So keep that in mind, that we planted these about the 1st of June because it had been so wet. Mid-August was really when we got most of our fruit. So keep that in mind. The other thing is that we compared hoop house to field grown. We didn't do as well in the hoop house. I think maybe it could be heat issues or what. So one of the takeaways is that we're going to try to plant them much earlier. So this year, mid-March, we want to have tomatillos in the ground. So that under the hoop house or in our row covers. And then on the larger ones, I was really pleasantly surprised how well some of them tasted fresh eating, like the purple ones, purple Coben, how well they did in salads. So I think we've just scratched the potential of these, and there's we need a lot of folks trying them and really coming up with some good ways to use them in our daily food meals.
Cool. Well, awesome, Tim. I really thank you for joining us today. And I'm looking forward to having you back next year, and we can get a little more update on the year 2 trials of this project and learn a little bit more.
Well, thanks, Justin. And we hope to have another tasting this summer. So we look forward to seeing folks out for that. Just look for us on Facebook.
Yeah, awesome. We'll be sure to include that field day in the newsletter as well, and the events on the newsletter. So I thank you for your time, sir, and you have a great day.
Thanks, Justin. Bye.